Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Councilmember Tui, and we're here tonight, the Community Health and Safety Council Committee meeting on July 2nd, 2025. I'm here with Councilmember Fossey, and Councilmember Bader will be arriving a few minutes late. We have two things on our agenda tonight: legislative impacts briefing from staff and a youth violence prevention update from staff. And we're going to start with the youth violence prevention update, and we're going to turn it over to Jennifer.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. So the mayor recently issued a directive around youth violence, and we've got kind of the drill down on the police department perspective, but just as some context for that, Mayor Franklin had asked staff to tackle that issue starting in 2018. And at the time, that directive focused on comprehensive gang reduction and youth violence prevention, working with community partners, working with juvenile justice partners, and several other initiatives under that. The focus this year is just a renewed commitment to youth safety. Leading up to that directive, the mayor called together a forum of school, community partners, youth, and that kind of helped create the content and paths for the directive on youth violence. It's got 4 initiatives: prevention, so existing crime prevention programs, and also new community focused strategies; partnerships, existing partners, and then also other initiatives that promote youth safety; community engagement and activation. So I think of this as kind of the providing new options and pathways and things that get folks pointed in the right direction, away from any violence risks. And then innovation, so using technology as we have in the past with the PD and other departments to enhance our response and things like that. And I think part of my point too in starting things off is just the recognition that there's lots of departments right now. Community communications and community development are also both really involved in these initiatives, along with the police department. We're working to expand that so we kind of have a whole of city approach, so that we're really looking at all the ways that different departments interact with youth and can help prevent youth violence. One item that we are likely to bring forward to council in the next few weeks, probably like a 3 to 5 week timeline, maybe faster. I think the mayor said faster than that, so maybe it'll end up being faster, but legal is working on an ordinance to focus on illegal graffiti. So it would make it so that graffiti taggers would be subject to a civil penalty for violations and for costs incurred by the city to remove illegal graffiti. So, when homeowners or businesses are tagged with graffiti, like through no fault of their own, the city's funded for a long time, has a fund that helps single family homeowners do that cleanup, but we don't fund for multifamily or businesses. And they obviously are just as frustrated at that cost. So this is an ordinance that at least one other city has passed. So we're working on fitting it into the city code, and we'll bring that forward to council. I think I might jump in, but Deputy Chief Hendrickson has a bunch of other stuff to talk with you guys about, and related to some of the questions that Councilmember Tui and Bader sent our way before the meeting too. So go.
Thank you. Yeah, I think probably we'll start off with the overall philosophy of the police department when we're dealing with juvenile crime. We really believe in a balanced approach. By no means do we think we should throw kids in the jail and throw away the key. We don't think that's the right way. But we also believe that there has to be some accountability. And so the police department is kind of in a unique position to provide some level of accountability. And so we do aggressively go after suspects, whether they're juveniles or adults. But realistically, the real driver for us when it comes to juvenile suspects and violent crime is we want to interdict the cycle. Something we've seen since 2017, when we first started seeing an increase in gang violence in the town, is one act of violence will lead to 4, 5, 7 more shootings, because we'll have a retaliation cycle that starts. And so we're able to go back afterwards and track it back. So what we found is the sooner we can interdict that, and contact the original shooter, the sooner we can stop that violence. It is extremely common for us to go on a scene of a serious crime, and nobody wants to talk to us. Victim won't talk to us. The witnesses won't talk to us. People in the area won't talk to us. And we hear the common statement of, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. And we're literally seeing additional shootings after each of these incidents because of that. And so our philosophy is adopted a little bit. We want to really interdict that. And the way we're doing that currently, we've integrated our violent crime unit with our major crimes detective. It is extremely common for our violent crime unit to be the first ones on scene to a shooting or homicide. And they start working that scene. And then the detectives come behind them. They develop more information. They work together. This last weekend, horrible example, but it's a good example of the way the system works. We had a homicide, violent crime unit was on scene within minutes, started developing information. The major crime people come behind them. They utilize some technology. We figure out who the shooter is, and then we make every effort to get that person in custody to stop that violence, because there were multiple comments about the next action down the road. So we are aggressive when we try to go find people who commit these violence, but we, at no means do we are trying to throw kids in jail for a long time. I think that's just really important for it. I know some of the questions that Councilmember Bader had to do with stats. So I'll start with the good stuff first and then maybe work to the less positive stuff. Overall crime in the city is down significantly. What we're seeing for violent crime, we're on the pace to be the lowest violent crime in the last 7 years by over 30%. And the only reason I can say it's 7 years is that's as far as my data went back that I had available to me. So we're actually 30% below this year projected for what we were in 2019. We're very excited about that. We're seeing similar levels of decrease in crimes and property crimes as well, 30% below our lowest over the last 7 years. So we think there's some real positive things happening. When it comes specifically to juvenile related crime, we are seeing that overall, juveniles are less likely to be victims of crime than they are over the last 5 years. So we're hopeful of that. And that's all crimes. That could be theft, that could be abuse, that could be what have you. So that's all levels of crime. Juveniles are less likely to be victims than they were in the last 5 years. So we think that's positive as well. Now, unfortunately, there are some less positive stats. We're seeing last year, we saw an increase in gun and gang-related violence among juveniles. And we're seeing that level stay consistent projections for this year as well. And we have some real concerns about it. Anytime you involve a gun, a kid, and a gang, nothing positive happens. So that's something we're really trying to focus on. So kind of the question is, what are we doing about it now? What we found over the last 7, 8, 9 years, the kids that really need our help, as soon as they see us or we're involved in something or we're leading something, the barriers go up. We understand that as well, right? These kids have some traumatic past. Maybe they have some real negative experience with law enforcement. I'm sure there's lots of social pressures on them not to be involved with the cops. We get that. And so what we've done over the last several years is we're starting to try to transition more into finding trusted community partners who can actually take the lead on some of these things. And I wrote down some of the people that we've had some great experience with. The Madres, our fantastic organization. We started this year with the Latino Civic Alliance, another great organization. We're working now with the Access Project. Obviously the YMCA and the Big Boys and Girls, great organization. And so we're starting to develop these trusted partnerships. And there's a couple of really great things about it. One, they don't have the barriers. The kids don't have the barriers to these groups that we do. A lot of these groups employ people with life experiences that we don't have, right? And so there's a better relationship to the kids. And the other part, frankly, for me, I think some of the most important part is there's definitely a couple people in those groups who will tell us exactly what we're doing wrong passionately. And we basically crave that because we don't know. And so I think one person in particular who I just adore, and she will fully explain what we're doing wrong, and the chief as well. And we really appreciate it. And she's fantastic. So, but the one thing we always try to remember is just because we're trying to provide services and accountability, they're not mutually exclusive. Even if we arrest a kid, we really start trying to find a service to wrap around them and their families to try to deal with bigger problems. Police usually deal with the emergency of the moment, And then we try to bring these groups in around us, behind us, to circle around this family to try to provide services that we don't have or can't supply. And I guess the one I really brought out that I thought is a prime example of this working is actually the way it should is the Latino Civic Alliance. Starting in February, we joined with them in the I Am Jaguar program. Great. They were down in King County working. The state funded them. They were able to come up and we joined in on them. So we started early on February. It's extremely simple for the officers to use the program. We have an electronic referral process. It's online. They fill it out, takes them a few minutes. They send it off, and then the police department backs away. Latino Civic Alliance reaches out to these kids. They start building a service plan for individual kids and their families, anywhere from education, childcare, all the way through job planning. We got our first kind of report on how we're doing with them. So we've got 12 referrals so far. And of the 12, 4 kids have graduated. 2 of those kids have got jobs. The other 2 are doing fantastic. Those are 4 kids who have, a new chance, who are going the wrong direction. So we're really excited about it. The other 8, one kid had left the state, which is, they have family someplace else down the like. The other ones are still working through the program, and only 1 has dropped out of the program. So for dealing with a really high risk population, kids who need really a lot of help, 11 out of 12 is beyond belief. So
I have one question. Is there an age limit for their interaction? Or
they typically assist youth, but they don't just assist the youth. So we will refer a juvenile to them, but then they'll engage with the entire family. So if there's another sibling that's over 18 but needs their help, they'll help them as well. So great, fantastic organization. Unfortunately, they did get some of their funding cut. So we're trying to work with them now to replace that funding somehow to continue the program. So,
okay.
And of course, I'd be remiss if I don't mention the fantastic relationship we have with the Mukilteo School District and the Everett School District. Through the tough times of the 2020s, 2021s, when a lot of other school districts were getting rid of their school resource officers, both those school districts never stopped. In fact, we got an email a couple of weeks ago, and they want more school resource officers, and we'd like to put them in there. We just don't have the staffing. So having the school resource officers in there, provide mentorship to those kids, build relationships with them, we think is invaluable beyond just the safety they provide to the school. So we're very much committed to that. So this has been something we've been working on since 2018 when the first mayoral directive came out. We established a violent crime unit at that point, and we're continuing to work through this. Obviously, we're using technology a lot now to try to address some of these crimes as quick as we can. We think there's some real powerful benefits to using technology. What we're really trying to do is be careful. In the past, if there was a suspect involved in a crime, officers would go to the area and they basically try to contact the person. And what we found is there's a lot of unintended contacts. And the problem is, and it just reinforced mistrust that we're stopping people because they meet the description. We found through the use of technology, we're able to more focus our enforcement efforts, reduce the number of investigative stops, increase the number of probable cause stops. And that's, again, goes right in hand with our philosophy of we want to police communities, the amount they want to be policed. We definitely don't want to over-police them. And if we do that and build the right relationships, we think we can build that trust, which will lead to future better outcomes. So the other question that I saw was, what are other departments doing? We're very much looking for a better mousetrap all the time. We believe in plagiarism. We will copy anybody and steal anything that works. One of the programs we identified that we really want to get involved with was a partnership with us and the YMCA for the Alive and Free program. It was a program out of Oakland. And if it works in Oakland, we're very happy, believe it will work in Everett. So we've tried twice now to receive federal funding, and both times were declined. It's one of my failures I'm still trying to fix, but we're looking around constantly through the council's generous funding. We go every year to the evidence-based policing conference, and it basically brings people from around the world to present crime prevention strategies that are actually evidence-based and not just, what I think works. So we're looking every year for something that works better, and we'll continue to do that. But we really think this idea of referring them to community partners and then us stepping back, we think that's what's going to work in combination with trying to interdict the violence.
I know that you went over the statistics that Councilmember Bader had asked. Do you mind just there? It shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, of course, of course. I'll start with the good again. Yeah, so basically our violent crime overall throughout the entire city of all violent crime, we're down 30% below 2019 levels. So it's the best it's been in 7 years. The only reason I can't go back farther is because that's the data we have available right now. So that's good. Property crimes are the same, so we're down significantly across all those. Juveniles are less likely to be victims of all crime right now this last year, which that's victims of crime. So we're very positive about that. The one area we are seeing increases is juvenile suspects involved in gang violations or gang crimes, gang-related crimes, and firearm-related crimes. And so that's our biggest worry at this point.
Thanks. I was over at the AWC conference, and I think that's what I was hearing from other law enforcement around the state too. So, thank you. Thanks for giving me.
Okay, any other questions, council? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Was a lot of good information. Anything else, Jennifer?
I don't have anything else. We can move to the
Okay,
legislative briefing
all
and
right, we'll turn it over to Lacey then.
yeah. She has a I think she's in,
I have a PowerPoint. It's my cheat sheet.
yeah. We'll let her get settled and get that pulled up and yeah. I think one piece that's not in the PowerPoint and it didn't tie directly to the legislative session, but the state Supreme Court issued their guidance on the public defender caseloads, which is not exactly what cities wanted, but there is a longer time frame to implement that. It reduces the caseloads that public defenders are, I guess, the limits for the number of cases by 2036, starting next year. So it kind of ramps down over time. We haven't done an assessment about the budget impacts of that because there's impacts on the number of the public defenders, but also the things that extraneous things relate to that. And it's just a challenging topic to see how there might just be enough people that want to take that job in the future to fill that higher need for FTEs to fill that. So continuing to track that mostly through AWC because they have been on top of, and we submitted letters to the Supreme Court as well through the city attorney's office. And we'll probably be back at the legislature next session and future sessions to talk about those impacts. I think Representative Peterson had some legislation that I don't think passed. There's an interesting piece about how the funding from the state kind of goes through the county and not directly to cities. So we're kind of still exploring how we can ensure that if there is a solution or if there is future investment in a future year, that some of that comes to our city in particular. So, but that gave you plenty of time to get the PowerPoint up. So
Thanks for riffing, Jennifer.
Yeah, real quick, Jennifer, on that topic. If David or someone at some point in the next month or two I think he mentioned at one of our meetings that he thought the city there might be some strategies or thoughts that he might have to how to deal with that, as well as things that we just can't deal with in greater detail. I'd be interested in having that come back to us. So thanks.
Okay. I am going to go very quickly through some of the past legislation from 2025 that impacts the criminal justice system. So I tried to focus on things that directly impact policing or the prosecutor's office or the court. I certainly did not capture all of the bills that may have some impact on any of those entities, given the sheer volume of legislation that makes its way through every year. So I tried to focus on the ones that I think are both the most impactful for the city and the ones that have some tie-in to our community or council. I've also tried to identify where there may be future council action. I can't guarantee that, if will be before council asking to adopt an EMC in any given timeline. But as I've been joking this week with some of the police officers, I'm maybe entering my council era. So you may be seeing me propose some of these amendments to the EMC, adopting things that the RCWs have changed. And I think that at least one of these bills was sponsored by our own Mary Fossey. So apologies if I misspeak on any of those bills. I'm trying to give a high level overview. If we have time, I will touch on some of the 2024 legislative impacts, just because I was out for a large chunk of the kind of follow-up after the 2024 legislative session. So I didn't have an opportunity to do what would normally have been my kind of follow-up from that legislative session. And I think there are some areas where certainly the council may be interested. So with that, we will touch on, I think I've got probably 20 or so bills. The first is going into effect here this month, which is a very modest amendment with a big impact, I think, to the definition of hate crime. So this amendment amended the definition of hate crime to include when a person commits a crime in whole or in part because of their perception of a person's protected class. The in whole or in part is new language. Before, there was some ambiguity about whether or not hate crime could be included as a hate crime if it wasn't entirely motivated by a person's animosity or perception of another person's protected class. I suspect that this will have an effect on our crime statistics related to hate crime in the city. So to the event that you're getting asked by constituents, if there's an increase in hate crime activity based on crime stats or police activity, this would be at least in part an explanation, may not be the actual explanation, but and as a reminder, hate crimes it's a tag that can be attached to certain crimes. So not all crimes can be hate crimes, but if it's involving assault, damage to property, or threats to person or property, that can be motivated and determined to be a hate crime. No council action on this one based on the way that these get charged. Next bill we're going to talk about is also effective on the 27th of this month. If I can. Affecting animal cruelty. This expands the crime of animal fighting and animal cruelty in the second degree in a number of ways to make it more applicable to broader action, broader activity by a suspect. A conviction in either of these now the judge has the opportunity to impose a permanent prohibition on ownership of animals. It does create a new misdemeanor for violating that imposed prohibition on ownership. And if there is future council action on this, it would be adopting that misdemeanor so that we could charge that in our municipal courts. This bill, as it relates to firearms purchases, is a monster bill. Councilmember Fossey, you may remember this one moving its way through the legislature. It's very detailed. It's very lengthy. It's very complicated in how it is applied. The very broad overview of this is that it establishes a permit to purchase a firearm structure. So it creates the requirement for a permit to purchase any firearm in the state of Washington, requires dealers to verify that the purchaser has a valid permit to purchase before they'll be permitted to purchase the firearm. The permit to purchase has safety training requirements to include live fire training. There are exemptions for that for active military or for law enforcement. And it puts a pretty heavy burden on the background checks program with State Patrol to not only create this permit structure and the training requirements, but also to have ongoing oversight over the permits once they're issued. So there are annual checks for continued eligibility as well as action. For example, if somebody has a permit to purchase, but then later is convicted of a disqualifying crime, has provisions for how to cancel that permit and ongoing continued eligibility checks. So we, as a city, are preempted, as you well know, from most firearms local legislation, and so no council action on this one.
Lacey, I have a question on that. I know in the past there's been, and maybe this has been corrected about selling at gun shows and secondhand selling of guns, how to control the permits for that and background checks.
I don't have a specific answer for you. My sense is that Washington has done a very good job of shoring up that
Okay,
that loophole. I can provide you specifics and
Okay.
follow up.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Make a quick note of that. Okay. Legislature also passed this bill with regard to forged digital likenesses. This goes into effect this year. Oh, one thing I did want to touch on with this firearms purchase bill, this has a lengthy period before it goes into effect. So this doesn't go into effect until 2027, in large part to allow State Patrol to build out that structure. But the forged digital likeness changes, those go into effect on the 27th of this month. It amends the crime of criminal impersonation in the second degree. It's expanded to include when a person knowingly distributes a forged digital likeness of another as a genuine visual representation or auto recording with the intent to defraud, harass, etc. And they know or should know that the image is not genuine. So this is an attempt to alleviate spoofs, AI faked videos, AI faked images, and creates a new expands this crime, which is a gross misdemeanor. So if there is future council action on this, it would be to update our existing criminal impersonation EMC, which is 10.14, to include this aspect of the new expanded crime. Related to, I don't make the titles for these, so I am aware that insanity is not the most proper term, but I am using the words from the statutes. So this is related to criminal insanity as it relates to competency to stand trial. So this law creates a new task force to review laws that are related to criminal insanity and competency to stand trial. The task force is empowered to conduct a comprehensive review of the existing law in order to identify barriers to administration, fairness, efficiency, and public safety, and to make recommendations for future legislative changes. No council action on this one, but I do want to point out, very deeply proud of Flora Diaz and her intimate knowledge of all things kind of competency to stand trial and the barriers that we've experienced, not only as our city, but any cities of with courts of limited jurisdiction, which is what our misdemeanors are funneled through. She has a very, very deep knowledge of these barriers, these structures. She has kind of historical knowledge of how the laws have been amended over the years and how things have been made worse and better. And our city attorney, with the support of administration, recommended her to sit on this task force, and the Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys did in fact make that recommendation. So we're really hopeful that she'll get to sit on this task force, and we're really proud of her. Some of you may have heard in 2023, there was a new program created called the Hope Cards program. What this program does is it allows a person who is issued a civil protection order, so the victim of a qualifying event can be issued a Hope Card. The Hope Card is something that they can carry with them in their wallet, and it summarizes key aspects of their protection order. So instead of carrying around their big packet of paperwork that says, yes, I have a protection order, here are all the terms, the Hope Card allows them to, for example, provide it to their divorce attorney or to law enforcement, and that allows law enforcement or whoever it is they're providing it to kind of have a jump off point to verify the existence of the protection order. This was 2023 legislation that created the program. It's up and running, but this bill 1460 expands the information that is to be reported on Hope Cards to include firearms and weapons surrender information, which is great. And it provides that they also must be provided to petitioners at no cost to them, and importantly includes ERPOs in the Hope Card program. So a petitioner who asks for an extreme protection order can now be issued a Hope Card as well. No council action on this, but we always like to see expanded access to information for especially domestic violence victims and those who seek civil protection orders. 5202, with regard to judicial orders, has some various dates of becoming effective. By and large, this is another pretty big bill that has a lot of aspects to it, but relevant to this discussion, it permits minors who are named in a primary petition. So they're named as protected parties when mom or dad goes to court and asks for a protection order. They're named as additional protected parties. To petition for a protection order in their own right after turning 18. So removes barriers from minors who become adults from getting a protection order against the person who they were protected from prior to turning 18. It also importantly adds possession of ghost guns while under a protection order to the crime of unlawful possession of a firearm in the first degree. So previously, having a ghost gun while a protection order is in place prohibiting you from having firearms wasn't explicitly a violation of unlawful possession of firearms. It now is. So that's great news. And because that UPF 1 charge is a felony, there is no council action. That's the jurisdiction of the county. Did you have a question?
For those listening at home, would you please let them know what ghost guns are?
Oh, yes. Ghost guns are untraceable firearms that don't have, all guns are required when a regular manufacturer makes them to be serialized. And ghost guns can be digitally printed, 3D printed, or they can be constructed from kits that can come in the mail. They come disassembled, unserialized. Somebody can put them together and voila, they have a functional firearm that is not serialized and thus not traceable. So I don't know that we've seen a ton of these in Everett, but certainly the specter of them is spooky, as their name would imply. Anything else on that? 1498 provides for a domestic violence co-responder grant program. This becomes effective, although I don't anticipate that the grant funds would be available for some time. It does become effective this month. This is, I think, a clever and creative way to fund DV co-responders. It adds a $100 fee to marriage license to fund a DV co-responder account. That account and its revenues have to be used for a grant program for utilizing domestic violence advocates to respond to law enforcement scenes to provide family support, resource connection, and navigating for victims. Any additional resources to domestic violence victims, including DV advocates who respond to law enforcement scenes, absolutely vital for the safety of those victims. So we love seeing additional avenues for funding those positions. So in the future, once we get some additional information on what that grant program may look like, it's going to be administered by the state, and we may be seeking some grant approval from council in the future. At least
I haven't
my
gotten
fingers
married.
crossed on that one.
I haven't gotten married recently. Any idea what the marriage license fee is now?
If memory serves, the fees will now go from anywhere between, I don't know what differentiates between the two types of marriage licenses, but the bill summary says they'll go from $36 at a basement. They're $36 to $72 now, somewhere in that range. So now they'll be $136 to $172, somewhere in that range. And I don't know what differentiates between the high and the low there. In a similar vein, 1811 creates a crisis co-response. There is some aspect of, I may be misremembering this one. I apologize. I was about to misspeak and say that there was a grant program associated with this one, but I don't think there is.
Yeah, there was something that had grant funding in it, but I think this is more the defining
The program. Yeah.
responders as first responders and then creating this program within the School of Social Work.
That's right. So this bill, no grant action. I think I have that in a later slide. This is effective this month. It compels the University of Washington School of Social Work to establish a crisis responder training academy. In previous legislation, UW social worker program has already created training tools and an academic program, but this actually creates an academy in conjunction with behavioral health services organizations, and graduates will receive a certification saying they're certified in this crisis co-response program. It should be operational statewide. It's kind of phased in depending on where you're at, but phased in by 2027. As far as I'm aware, no current council action, but again, we always like to see some additional resources going to crisis co-responders. So, turning a wide turn here, 1484. Again, a pretty simple amendment to an existing statute with regard to sentencing on convictions for rape. This is effective this month. It provides for an exceptional sentence above the standard sentencing range. So you may be familiar that when somebody commits a felony, they are placed on a standard sentencing range depending on the severity of the crime and their criminal history. Judges are constrained to that range unless there are exceptional reasons to go above or below that. So this would provide an exceptional reason to go above that if a rape results in pregnancy of the victim, regardless of the victim's age. The change here is that previous to this, the exceptional sentence would only be possible if the victim was under 18. So this expands that to even adult victims. No council action on this. This is all felony. This one I've failed to put in the effective date, but it's 2029. So we're looking way down the hill here. But this is related to speeding and speed enforcement. So there is a product that I did not know about before I learned about this bill called an Intelligent Speed Assistance Device, an ISA. And what that is if you're familiar with an ignition interlock device, a device installed in a vehicle that means you have to blow into it to make sure that your breath alcohol is below a certain limit after you've had a DUI. And then if you blow over it, the car won't start. This is a similar device aimed at habitual offenders for moving violations, dangerous drivers. What this would do is would allow this ISA device to be installed on a habitual offender's vehicle under certain circumstances in lieu of suspension. And what ISAs do is they use GPS to limit the velocity of the moving vehicle to the posted speed limit. And there are constraints on how these devices would have to be calibrated and installed. It's a big bill with lots of technical information in it. But the main goal is to allow people to still have their vehicles for transportation to get to work, but to limit their ability to drive recklessly and dangerously. So violations of the speed restrictions that are placed on the vehicles using the ISA device are infractions, but tampering with the device is a gross misdemeanor. So looking ahead, if any of you plan on being in council in 2030 or 2029, we may be asking at some point to adopt that gross misdemeanor for tampering with the ISA device. Certainly not at the top of anybody's priority list just yet, because we can't utilize this tool just yet, but looking towards the future, I'm interested to see how this affects these habitual offenders who are constantly speeding through our streets and others. There we go. A little background on this bill, 1829. Last year, the legislature signed the Tribal Warrants Act, which becomes effective as of yesterday. What that bill did, it created a uniform process by which Washington law enforcement officers can facilitate the return of an individual to a tribe to which they belong, where the individual violated tribal law but sought to avoid tribal jurisdiction by leaving it because the constraints around jurisdictional boundaries when it comes to our tribal partners. So that happened in 2024, became effective just this month. This bill further amends that act by clarifying some procedures. It also permits the tribes to enter warrants into Superior Court. So they enter in through the normal process, and regular officers out on patrol will be able to see those warrants as being entered and valid and can make arrests based on those warrants. No tribal action on this, but certainly some police training coming our way. This bill, I'm told, is potentially applicable to some instances, or would be applicable based on instances we've had here in the city even. This is theft from a first responders. What it does is expands the crimes of first-degree theft and first-degree possession of stolen property to include theft from EMS vehicles, more or less, under certain circumstances. No council on action on this. Both of these crimes are felonies, but important to note here that the loss of property for theft one and possession of stolen property is typically much higher than the $1,000 threshold that is included in here. So even I would say some minor theft from operating EMS vehicle may qualify for this enforcement tool. This bill 5356 touches on criminal justice training. It becomes effective next year in order to provide CJTC, the criminal justice training facility or commission, to develop this training. But it does require all officers who work patrol to complete training on victim-centered trauma-informed approach to victim interviews and interrogations, and calls related to sexual violence. So every patrol officer is going to have to take this once it becomes operational, and every patrol officer will have to continue to take it every 3 years. So again, really excited to see some focus on allowing our officers to have tools to kind of better provide some services to especially DV victims. And I think we have time, yeah?
Yeah.
So a few just remaining pieces on my to-do list, really, to be frank with you, from the 2024 legislative session. There were a few bills that passed that we've trained on that officers can cite into district court that we don't presently have the ability to cite into municipal court. And so in the event that you're going to be seeing more of me, this may be where we start, as a couple of these bills created new crimes that we could be charging here in Everett. So number one, catalytic converter theft. I understand that this concern from the community has sort of dropped off, the reasons for which are not entirely clear to me. But there's always the potential that catalytic converter thefts could resurge just based on any number of factors. So what this bill did last year is it created a new crime for trafficking in, possessing, selling, or offering to sell catalytic converters or obscuring the VIN numbers from catalytic converters. It's a gross misdemeanor that presently we wouldn't have the opportunity to file into our own municipal court. Another one that the court or the council may wish to consider for adoption into the Everett Municipal Code is 5444, firearms in sensitive places. We already know you can't take firearms onto school properties, but this bill would expand that prohibition to libraries, zoos, aquariums, and importantly, transit facilities. So that would be another gross misdemeanor for having a firearm in any of those sensitive places that presently officers, of course, can send over to our district court. But if we were to adopt this into the Everett Municipal Code, they would be able to process it kind of locally. Election security, 5843 from last year, new crimes created for interference with ballot and election processes. This is another one that just created new gross misdemeanor crimes that could be processed through the Everett Municipal Code. And then protection orders in the event of a finding of criminal insanity. So if somebody is charged with a crime and they are determined not to be fit to stand trial due to their behavioral health disorders, this law permits civil protection orders when a person is found not guilty by reason of insanity. Presently, of course, a victim could go get a protection order, but the violation of that protection order is not yet, has not yet been adopted in the municipal code. So that would be another enforcement mechanism. I don't think we're seeing a ton of these, but we want to make sure that those tools are available to victims when they become applicable. And I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions or be given assignments for a follow-up.
Any questions?
Go for it. Yeah, thanks. So Lacey, for real quick, the last one there, catalytic converter, another segue on Association of Washington Cities conference. I went to one on theft of copper wire. And they mentioned, I think they mentioned that the tracking of catalytic converters has gotten better, and so that's why it dropped off. But related to that, maybe it's more applicable for our for law enforcement. But they were mentioning that one of the challenges with the copper wire theft is that you can file a report in one jurisdiction, and apparently it doesn't go. It isn't well connected to, like, if we have a report here in Everett, maybe not Marysville or the county. I don't know if that's true, but they mentioned that might be something to look at. Can we do a better job at sharing that information? So.
Yeah, absolutely. If we enter a report into Everett, anyone in the county, since we're on a joint dispatch center, will see it. Catalytic converters change because the requirements for VINs on them. There's really no serial number on copper wire, and it's so prevalent everywhere. It's hard to figure out where it came from. So
I think it was some report related to alerting, for lack of a better term, recyclers or junkyards, that something was, out there. So I'll try to find the additional info, but it was an intriguing one to try to deal with that theft. But it was interesting. They mentioned catalytic converters, and how the tracking had helped much more with that. And then another question, Lacey, and I'm not sure if the hate crimes one applies to us, because I'm not sure, would we have to prosecute them at our level, or is that a superior court or district court?
Their superior court or
Okay,
district court.
so I want to ask about that. Ask about that one. But the forged digital likeness one, it looks like since a council action could be needed on that one. The challenges with proving intent to defraud, harass, threaten, or intimidate, is that versus maybe just making fun of someone, or poking fun at someone, is that going to be an issue if we bring these cases forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be an issue when a criminal statute has a requirement that we show intent. It's something we're very comfortable with as prosecutors, is figuring out ways to show intent. It can be something so simple as kind of the context in which it was shared, maybe a post breakup or something like that. So there are a lot of ways that we can provide evidence to a jury and to a judge about intent. My biggest concern about really anything AI related is we don't know as prosecutors just how adept courts are at kind of handling some of that evidence. So that would actually be a bigger concern for me, is things like, how do we authenticate the image as adjusted, and what should it have looked like, or how was it adjusted, and showing that, and really having the resources in our prosecutor's office in order to do that. But intent doesn't give me as much heartache as showing the some of the technical aspects of that crime.
And I assume elected officials, we're probably not protected by anything like that.
Oh,
I assume are we fair game?
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Certainly there are protections for elected officials with regard to like cyber harassment. And so some of these may be applicable as both criminal impersonation under this new law, but also cyber harassment or something like that. There are elevated protections for elected officials and individuals who work for the law enforcement officers or defense attorneys or anything like that, when the purpose is to harass them for doing their job. And so we would have to evaluate what it looks like, but I wouldn't think that, absent some First Amendment concerns, that elected officials are just going to have to suffer through that.
I just have one clarification on the firearms and sensitive places that might come back to us. So that would apply to everyone who has a permit for a concealed weapon?
There are exceptions for individuals who are carrying permitted. And one of the questions I don't know the answer to, that I would want to wrap my mind around before bringing it before council, or certainly talk it over with administration, is how that interacts with this new permit to purchase and permit to carry. So
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure what the interaction between those are, but generally there is an exception to the sensitive places for individuals under some circumstances when they have a concealed permit. But there's exceptions to the exceptions, like you can't go onto a school with a firearm, regardless of whether you have a CPL under some circumstances.
Okay.
So it's
So would these sensitive places be like schools then?
that's the intent, I believe, behind the
Okay.
legislation, is to treat them like schools or
And
can't
did
remember
they
some of the other
list
areas.
the possible sensitive areas places? Or would we be able to add to that?
Yeah,
wanted
unfortunately,
to.
the list is the list and we can't make it broader because
Okay.
of that state preemption issue.
Okay, Gotcha. I just was thinking about like the Children's Museum or something like that. So,
Yeah,
okay. Well, that answered all my questions. Thank you so much.
of course.
And I don't think we have anything else, Jennifer?
No, I can just add that for next month's meeting, I think tentatively I'm talking with community development folks about having a briefing from staff related to housing, but more focused on like homelessness and the kind of the service side of that as it relates to your committee on community health and safety. So we want to take kind of a similar but different take on that topic to the Parks and Quality of Life group that has more of like the built environment, land use perspective, and then you guys kind of that side of the housing issue for next month in August. But yeah, I don't have anything more on our 2 items tonight.
Okay, great. Anything else from my committee? All right. Well, thank you very much and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thanks.